All right, welcome back. I hope you're enjoying the video so far. I really hope that I'm doing a good job of communicating and helping you follow my thought process, because to me it's actually all quite simple, and it's important to really try to keep it simple and not try to make it fancy. All right, what we're going to do now, I need to lay out a few things for you, so I want you to follow me over towards the whiteboard here, and let's see if we can talk about this next subject. All right, friends. Now, believe it or not, that took a whole lot longer than a few seconds. We had to get that done. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to talk a little bit about 2008. That's what all of this centers around. We have the white paper, the revolutionary technology that was released, that is Bitcoin, October 31st, 2008. We have, in that same year, an unprecedented event. A lot of people think it happened just in the United States, but no. It happened globally. We're going to get into that. Before we do, we need to lay out a few things. So first, there's a million, a billion, and a trillion. And I accentuate those on purpose because I want you to hear them, because as I use them, they have different meanings, and very few people are aware of the meaning. So let's start here. We have $1 million. Okay, just exactly what is $1 million? Let's look at it this way. If you paid yourself $1 every second for the next however long, how long would it take you to reach $1 million? Does that make sense? So 60 seconds in a minute you would have $60. How long until you had $1 million? Approximately 12 days. If you paid yourself $1 every second to get $1 million, just short of about 12 days. Now, next question. A billion with a B. How many seconds would it take you to reach $1 billion? This is where it gets interesting. Just short of 32 years. $1 billion is a huge number. 12 days, 32 years. That's a massive time frame. That's the difference between $1 million and $1 billion. Now, next one, right? This is where it gets even better. A trillion. $1 trillion. Hopefully you're guessing. Approximately 32,000 years. If I paid myself $1 for every second to reach $1 trillion, 32,000 years. That is the difference between $1 million, $1 billion, and $1 trillion. Some very significant numbers that when we start talking banking, we start talking finances, we start talking debt, we start talking income. Everybody wants to be a billionaire. That's a big number. There's a website called usdebtclock.org. If you go to that, plug that in, you will see the running count of the United States government's debt. And it is right now somewhere around $20 trillion. I don't even know how to grasp that number. That is such a massive number. So, what was it this year, very quietly, I guess just a few weeks ago actually, the United States Treasury Department put out a release, a press release, quietly said that they were borrowing $1 trillion just for the year. Go figure. Just for the year. Hey, you know what? I just need to borrow $1 trillion. Is that cool? I mean, really? What? Okay. 2008. The banks that you're loaning your money to, the banks that you're voting for by putting your money in their hands, using the printing money through the Federal Reserve, a central banking system, the laws of economics are built upon this fractional reserve lending. Not built upon, but that's one of the key pieces of what allows the cash flow in the money supply. Fractional reserve lending. They took all this money that you borrow, or that they borrow from you, and they basically gambled it. They basically put it into some bad debt. Go research 2008. Look at what really happened. There's a documentary that Matt Damon did called Inside Job. And at the end of that documentary, you'll get a bit of a gut check, a bit of a humanity check, just to let you know exactly where you're at, because it should ring your bell a little bit. Lehman Brothers, one of the largest investment firms that nobody saw coming, literally went bankrupt and collapsed. But not just them. I think it's over 200, maybe 250 other financial institutions. All of them went bankrupt. Belly up, boom. They lost your money, they gambled with it, and they lost. But what happens? The government, that's $20 trillion in debt, they said, hey, no worries, you can borrow $700 billion, no problem. I mean, what? Like, those numbers don't even make sense. So only about $350 billion of those dollars were used immediately. Wells Fargo and Bank of America were two of the top receivers. Morgan Stanley, Chase Bank, just some massive bailouts. And that's what it was called. It was a bailout. It wasn't, that's probably a good word for it. These banks went bankrupt. The government loaned them some money so that they could stay up and running. Now here's where I have a problem with that. Not only did they gamble and lose our money, not only did the government, which is $20 trillion in debt, loan $350 billion, which to date, I read an article, is estimated somewhere around $4 trillion that's accumulated over the years now. There was no accountability. The money that they received, that those banks received for that bailout, there's no accountability. In my world, there's cause and effect. In my world, for you to be who you want to be, to grow and become a better person, there is accountability not only for your words, but for your actions. If you and I ran a business that lost $25 billion, I don't think we'd be in business anymore. I don't think we could go to the government and say, hey, can I borrow $1 trillion? I don't think that would happen. But these bank executives, they took that money, they continued to get their bonuses, and within that, these banks, they merged quietly. They bought up smaller banks with that infusion of money. And the whole thing that I kept hearing was this phrase, too big to fail. That's why the government infused money into the banking system so that it wouldn't fail. You and I, let me put it this way. What that means is so that it wouldn't fail is so that you and I would not raise up, so that you and I would not become outraged, so that we would not see zeros in our bank account, so that we would stay passive. You and I didn't see it. Those numbers stayed in our bank account because of what happened behind the scenes. And that's what you need to know. So here's my question to you. In 2008, did you have your money in SunTrust or Bank of America or Chase or Wells Fargo or JP Morgan? Did you have your money there? Yeah. Today, 2018, February 20, 2018, do you still have your money in those banks? Because if you do, you weren't paying attention. Now, that's not necessarily your fault, but it is responsibility that you need to take. Because the whole thing was designed so that you wouldn't see it. But you need to see it. You need to see what's going on. But this, friends, was not just America. The United States allocated $700 billion. The European Union allocated $500 billion because Iceland, Italy, Portugal, Spain, Ireland, Greece, Cyprus, their economies belly up, all in the same time. In the United States, Lehman Brothers, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, Wells Fargo, Chase, Bank of America, belly up. In South America, Brazil, Argentina, Venezuela, poor Venezuela, they're still having problems today. Their inflation rate is something like 13,000%. Their currency is worth nothing. And most of the wealthy people in Venezuela are buying into Bitcoin rapidly because it's a store of value. I need you to understand this, because this is everything that is the problem. And if we don't know the problem, we can't make changes. If we don't know the problem, we can't move forward. This is about moving forward. Up until now, the banking system, not inherently evil, it has served us fine. But it's no longer working. It has absolutely failed. 10 years later, Wells Fargo is still having issues. Are you kidding me? Like, come on, guys. There was no accountability there. For the first time, we have an alternative. And if we don't take advantage of that alternative, if we don't put our money over here and vote for that alternative, I think somebody was coming through the wall there. If we don't vote for that alternative, then what do we have? Then we're just basically, we're staying passive, we're being nice little sheeple, you ever heard that? We're being these very passive society. And that's what this is about. What this is about is us taking back control, responsibility, and yes, it's a bit daunting, I'm not gonna lie to you, but responsibility always is. Growth, change, always requires an extreme amount of effort, but it's worth it. It's always worth it on the other end. Real quick, I want you to know, I've dabbled a little bit, probably just enough to be dangerous, in constitutional law. All of the founding fathers, the psychology behind that really fascinated me. And there's a couple quotes here that I want to read to you. All of the early founding fathers, all of the early presidents, and even some of the middle presidents, I think Woodrow Wilson, the 28th president, they all understood the reality of what happens if you let a central authority control the money supply. Go do some research on this. It'll blow your mind. Just to read real quick, Thomas Jefferson, the third president, and one of the moving pieces behind our what used to be a republic here in the United States. He said, if the American people ever allow private banks to control the issue of their currency, these banks will deprive them of all their property, and this issuing power should be taken from the banks, restored to the people to whom it properly belongs. That's Thomas Jefferson. Woodrow Wilson, he was the one that actually signed the paper that brought the Federal Reserve, the central bank, into existence, brought it into our system. Here's what he says. I am a most unhappy man. I have unwittingly ruined my country. A great industrial nation is controlled by its system of credit. Our system of credit is now concentrated. The growth of the nation, therefore, and all of our activities are in the hands of a few men. We have come to be one of the worst ruled, one of the most completely controlled and dominated governments in the civilized world. No longer a government by free opinion, no longer a government by conviction and the vote of the majority, but a government by the opinion and duress of a small group of dominant men. This was back in the early 1900s when he signed that sheet of paper, bringing the Federal Reserve into play. He regretted it. He looked back and he said, oh my God, I made a mistake. Now, I'm not here to go into any of these conspiracy theories, but I am here to tell you there's a very real problem that I have a very real problem with. Now, what we're going to do is in this next video, I'm looking at my notes over here. In this next video, we're going to look at one more problem. And this next problem is what I told you about the data and how the current system, not only is it failing us, the current money system, and by the way, those banking problems haven't gone away. They're just still there. They keep getting propped up. Go research it. It'll blow your mind. But the other piece to it is what they're doing with the data. And the problem with the data, they can't hold on to it. There's no accountability there either. Once we show you that, then we're going to talk about the solution. The solution is amazing. So I hope this got you going a little bit, because that's what I'm after. I want you to feel the reality of this. But then we're going to bring you right out of it, because the future is bright. the sun is shining. After every storm, the sun is always still there. And this is amazing. So stay with me. We'll see you in the next video.